Is that good? All right. All right. Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm Michael Casey. I'm just leaving it at that at the moment. Some of you may know that I, until recently, was the Chief Content Officer at CoinDesk, but had a few changes, so I'm just Michael Casey now, which is actually quite pleasant. So I'm here representing myself, and happy to see so many of my former CoinDesk colleagues involved in this great event. We've got I think, fascinating panel. I hear there's been a bunch of AI conversations going on here, but for good reason, because it's an exciting, almost scary, certainly intriguing moment. Jake and I, by the way, did a podcast this week that you should all check out, Money Reimagined. It's the podcast that I do every week with Sheila Warren, and Jake laid out a lot of great different perspectives on the intersection between AI and crypto. On that note, though, why don't we just go down the line? You guys introduce yourselves, and then we'll just pick it up from there. Jake.
Thank you, Michael, and greetings, everyone. My name is Jake Brukhman. I'm the founder and CEO of CoinFund. We're a blockchain-focused investment firm, about 30 people based in New York, Miami, and Boston. For the last couple of years, we've really been paying attention to this intersection of AI and Web3 and made investments in that intersection as far back as 2021. And now, of course, this has become a really prescient narrative that I'm sure you've heard about. So I'm excited to speak more about that today. Thank you.
Okay. Niraj?
Hey, guys. My name is Niraj, and I'm a co-founder at Ritual. And the goal of Ritual is to make it very easy for smart contract developers to integrate AI into their applications. Before Ritual, I was a GP at Polychain for 6 years, where I led a number of investments in various crypto infra things, and started looking at crypto AI very closely. And after a certain point, it started sucking up all of my time, and I just realized I had to leave venture and go start a venture in the space, and that's what I'm building today.
And Stacy.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy-Ann Pearson. I've been working full-time in crypto Web3 for about 5 years now. I started in research in China with Oxford's Blockchain Research Institute. Then I moved into digital identity. I then worked at a metaverse startup, which the funnest thing we worked on was building the PudgyVerse for the Pudgy Penguins, so working with Luca Netz and his team. And I'm currently the head of Web3 for Asia Pacific and Japan for AWS. For more perspective, obviously we're very heavily invested in 5 big bet areas, and Web3 and crypto is one of those areas. So super excited to talk about the intersection of Web3 and AI today.
So as you can see, it's quite an eclectic panel, traversing different perspectives from a very large company to a startup to CoinFund, which is probably the biggest investor in crypto and AI around. So on that note, I thought maybe we'd just start off, given that when you start unpacking the AI crypto connection, there's so many different directions you can go with it. There are just multiple use cases, there's pluses, negatives, it's a fascinating conversation. So maybe, just to start off, if each of you could give us what you see as your sort of most exciting, most interesting use case, and then we can sort of take it from there. So what are you most interested in at this stage, Jake?
Thanks, Michael. At CoinFund, I think we take a little bit of an infrastructural view. So as we said on the podcast the other day, you can kind of bring AI to Web3, and that maybe looks like reinforcement learning for security, or having an LLM explain something that's going on chain. And you can also bring Web3 to AI. I happen to think that this latter approach is a lot more interesting, because when you bring Web3 to AI, what you're doing is you're taking the pipeline that produces AI models and products, which is kind of people, data, compute, and productization, and you start to democratize it. You start to support open source. You start to support more open computation. You start to support novel monetization strategies for these products. You open up the data. You have new business models for data provenance and copyright and things like that. And in doing so, you go from a world where you could only work on AI seriously if you work at Google, to a world where scientists who have brilliant ideas about AI can try those ideas by crowdfunding compute and getting access to like an open computation network, and then actually making money from a product and not having to work in big tech. So that's the world we sort of want to see, and our investments so far, which include WorldCoin, Jensen, Giza, Sindri and Bagel Network and others, they really speak to that infrastructural view of opening up that pipeline.
Great. Niraj?
So a lot of the things that we believe are important about crypto AI is really, to what Jake said, it's kind of combining the best of both worlds. AI is this technology that's advantaged by being highly centralized. Big companies that create big models and have a lot of compute. And crypto really is like a tool for self-sovereignty. It allows you to own your data, own your identity, and being able to combine those properties, I think, is a really important new innovation that we have. A couple of the properties, the salient properties that I think you get from crypto AI, one is privacy. If you can build privacy on the inputs, the outputs, and the models, that's really, really important and something we don't really have today. Computational integrity and verifiability of all of these pieces, censorship resistance, and ultimately, now that you're building all of these things in a verifiable way, you can attach programmable incentives to all of the different parts of the ML stack, whether it's at the data labeling level or at the compute level or at the model level. There's a lot of really, really interesting things that you can build with this new tooling. And so applications we're excited about, I think the panel's about AI agents. I think AI agents is a super exciting new use case of varying degrees of things you can do with them. DeFi, NFTs. I really believe that AI will help bring and usher in the next millions of users into crypto. And there's a lot of exciting angles in all of the different subspaces within crypto.
So Stacey, millions of users, but I mean, how are we going to compensate them?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly the direction I was going. What I'm most excited about with this intersection is the value redistribution back to the individual users. So building off what Niraj was saying, right? So right now, a lot of the benefit of our data is being aggregated, right, by the largest companies that are able to produce the models and the use cases and applications that are built on top of these foundation models. However, not a lot of value is coming back to the originators of the data, the content that's being used to train a lot of these models. So something I'm very excited about is, what will Web3 bring to AI in terms of being able to distribute some of those benefits back to the individual or the company or the entity. So for example, if you created or you drew something or you took a picture of something and that you posted it on the internet and that happened to be swallowed within the training data of a large foundation model, it shouldn't be that you get absolutely no compensation for that and you have to go into a legal battle with a foundation model creator in order to get your due benefit from you being able to create that. And I think that's something that's fascinating, where AI agents attached to your crypto wallet can usher in a new era where you are getting value for what you are creating and putting on the internet, where AI is using your content, your data to build out, well, some are open source, some are for profit, even though they shouldn't be for profit, but you know what I mean. So that's the aspect I'm very excited about.
You heard it, folks, from AWS, not for profit. Way to go forward here. So Jake, Stacey's framing there, I think, falls very much within your Web3 for AI benefit stack. But I want to flip it a bit here, because when we were talking earlier, you were mentioning security issues. And I think it's an appropriate one to think about from the question mark at the end of the title of our panel, right? This is a good thing, right? Well, depends how you look at it. Tell us what you see coming down the pike in terms of AI and security for smart contracts.
Sure. We've seen a number of startups in the market, actually both in kind of crypto and outside of crypto as well, start to apply kind of more modern, machine learning to the problem of security. So in crypto, for example, that has looked like reinforcement learning that learns how to find vulnerabilities in smart contracts. And what's a little bit scary about that is we can really imagine that we're not far off from a world where these larger reinforcement learning models are much better at finding vulnerabilities than humans. And so, really this is poised to, at least a little bit, disrupt kind of the auditing industry that we have. And what's really interesting about these models is that when they do find vulnerabilities, it could go, well, they might find them in the smart contracts, but they might also find vulnerabilities in the kind of like Ethereum virtual machine itself. And that's really something that auditing doesn't cover. And so you have this wider sort of reach of finding vulnerabilities, and you get the sense that like if this technology starts to be deployed more openly, more widely across the smart contract world, it becomes kind of table stakes to have your smart contract reviewed by an AI, or you might just get hacked. So that's the kind of world that we're heading to, I think, in
So basically the message is buckle up, everybody. Get ready for these potentially helpful but also potentially invasive agents to come after your smart contracts. Niraj, so AI requires a lot of compute, and blockchains are, as we know, not very efficient at dealing with a lot of compute. So how do we deal with that problem? If we're going to find ways to integrate this tech into the writing of smart contracts, the integration of different transactions, blockchains, and so forth, how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways, I think, to take a cut on this question. So I guess the current meta kind of backdrop of why you can't do AI on most existing systems today is that the compute is just too intensive. It would run up the gas limit on Ethereum, and you need to kind of basically take it off chain to make it efficient for most use cases. There are a number of different techniques that you can use to actually, because you obviously still want verifiability in that case. And we've seen a variety of new approaches start to come out. There's obviously a number of ZKML companies that are trying to encapsulate a lot of this model work into ZK circuits. There's now newer kind of optimistic solutions that maybe give a little bit from a security standpoint, but perhaps have a little bit less overhead on the proof side. So very much, I think, leaning into the run off chain, prove on chain paradigm that seems to be kind of the new wave, I think, is the way to go with a lot of this. And I also think largely, crazy to think about, but most of the industry now outside of Bitcoin is proof of stake based. And so we've really kind of gone away from the GPU times of before. And so I'm starting to see a number of networks start to start and build incentives around basically compute marketplaces and bringing a bunch of GPUs onto their network. And again, you can be very kind of heterogeneous with the types of GPUs you bring onto your network. Some AI models you really only need a CPU and you can kind of run in still sort of a parallelized way, all the way to consumer grade GPUs and then all the way up to the the A100s, H100s. So it's I think like what we're focused on is generating new interesting ways of gathering demand. We want to see, like, our MO is to see a ton of new AI-enabled Web3 protocols. And I think if we can get there, I think we can kind of bring a bunch of demand to all of these new GPU networks that are kind of coming online.
So, I mean, pictures starting to emerge here, Stacey, of a very decentralized approach to how compute is done. Maybe talk through what Amazon's or AWS's perspective is, because clearly, Amazon, one of the big five platforms, a long history of AI. I mean, you're an algo-driven company. What are you betting on? And I mean, is this something that you expect large companies like yours to sort of do in-house, or are you sort of opening this up, and do you expect AI to become ultimately a decentralized undertaking?
Sure. So I'll talk about it first from the AWS side, and then talk about it secondly from a future trend perspective from my role as head of Web3. So from the AWS side, we do take 5 big bets. So it's fintech, Web3 and crypto, AI/ML, health tech, and then climate tech. So for the AI/ML side, as Michael mentioned, like we have been using algorithms and AI for a very long time for our logistics aspects and supply chain management. So where we are today, of course, post ChatGPT, is the explosion of interest and use cases that are built around generative AI. From AWS's perspective, we don't take a bet or a view on who is going to be the leading model provider or which chatbot is going to be the winner. Instead, we take a community-driven approach, or I want to say open source approach. So one of our biggest solutions that we have from an infrastructure perspective is called Amazon Bedrock. And from Bedrock, you have access to as many foundation models as we can convince to list within Amazon Bedrock. So for example, we have Claude that's available. We have Meta's or Facebook's Llama model that's available. So Claude is by Anthropic. We also have Hugging Face, Stability AI, i21 Labs, and these are all available within one area. If you think about some of the other big fives, they're pushing their own foundation models as part of their approach. So from the AWS side, we don't take a bet on who's going to win. We're just providing the access to as many foundation models as you can utilize. We have another one that allows you to build, so that's SageMaker. So if you want to build your own FM, then you can also do that with us. So that's on the core side. From the Web3 side, when I think about AI agents, some things that we like to think about, right? I don't know if you remember when IoT was the biggest thing in the market. Everyone was talking about, well, devices are going to be able to interact with each other without the individual, right? So if your car is parking itself and there's a meter that it needs to pay, then the car will just talk to the meter. So that's something that we're getting really excited about in terms of AI agents, and what if they could connect to your crypto wallet, right? So if you as an individual, if you had an agent that is helping you, let's say the most common use case, right, around trading, helping you try to find, tokens or projects that you're very interested in, you lay out a set of guidelines, right? If it has a strong team, or if it has this XY market cap, then, purchase or buy into it. Those are the kinds of future use cases that will be very exciting in terms of, from a consumer standpoint, how Web3 is going to integrate with AI.
So Jake, this past week or so, we got NVIDIA's earnings, and just once again, just explosive in terms of the numbers. Clearly, the demand for GPUs at the moment in relation to the AI infrastructure build is just astounding. But I thought one of the things that was really interesting that came up in our podcast conversation was whether or not, in fact, the way in which Web3 could win this is not just that it is a value proposition for security, for protecting data, for all of the advantages we've been talking about, but that actually it may actually become a more efficient way to run that compute. Can you talk through how that might happen?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you look at our portfolio companies, Jensen and Bagel, like these might be good examples, because both, on some level, both of these companies, what they're trying to do is they're trying to automate the respective functions that is their subject matter, right? So in Jensen's case, we're talking about decentralized training, and the way that Ben spoke here just a few days ago, and what he was saying was that what we're really building here is a platform that is not only usable by humans but also by models themselves. So if you want a world where models are building models, then you really need sort of like an efficient process by which model training is kind of capitalized and is performed and is scaled, in a decentralized manner. And similarly, when you look at what Bagel is doing, they're operating more, in the data space. And one way that you can think about Bagel in the future is really like the platform for data for AGI. So it's not just humans that are curating and selling and buying data. It's also AIs that are producing data, and agents potentially transacting on chain to purchase or sell data, right? So like both of these startups really represent a measure of automation and efficiency that kind of gets us to the next level of productivity where agents can do things and models can train models. So that's like one way of answering that question.
Okay, and then I want to flip it back to this question about who do you trust in AI? And when, again, the Web3, I think, value prop here on that is kind of exemplified by the rather amusing experiences of Google Gemini this past couple of weeks, right? I mean, the model that I think a lot of the sort of big tech position has been taking, certainly in testimony before Congress and the like, is like, hey, we've got to regulate this stuff. Trust us. We are going to if you regulate us, we'll make sure that we will trustfully build models that really serve humanity in a way. And if you push this out into the open and open source it all, you're going to get all these bad actors and so forth. And it does look as if Google, in trying to be a trusted entity and solving things like DEI, just ended up with a model that produced something quite ridiculous, right? Founding fathers represented as African Americans. And so I'd like you guys, just to all of you, just think how do we deal with this, right? So because clearly the problem of bias is ingrained in the data that the internet itself has built with algorithms that have sort of manipulated us over the years, and so we've got a pre-existing problem with this data. Can Web3 give us something that is going to serve humanity better? I think is where I'd like to close this conversation out. And Stacey, I'd like to throw to you if I can.
Yeah, for sure. I'll speak not from my AWS standpoint, but from a core Web3 believer standpoint. So, like you mentioned, right, trust shouldn't be owned by any singular entity. It should be a community-driven effort. So, for example, when you speak about, hey, what about these data sets that are being produced, content that's being produced that we know to be non-factual, right, or biased. What if then you had sort of a community-driven approach where you are having the community directly review, tag, give feedback on, what we agree as a society to be factual, to be accurate, historically accurate, and reward the most active participants within that review cycle. Now, of course, that opens up new issues. Us as a society agreeing on one view of what is factual, that's a whole different story. But the idea is that instead of one entity like Google, Amazon, Meta, OpenAI, being able to control what are the parameters you put around the models that they're building and the use cases and the consumer-facing apps that they're building on top of it, what if you then disperse that responsibility to the community and have reward systems dedicated to that? We're already seeing that happening. I'll just very quickly, the grass, right? I think that's one of the first use cases where we're seeing they're trying to give ownership back to the community, where they'll pay you for your excess use to sell to AI companies who are scraping the internet. So that's like a first step. What we need to do is take more steps towards making it a community-driven model where we're rewarding community participants to make the data and make the content more aligned with reality.
Yeah, we've just opened up a can of worms. We've just got less than a minute left. And so unfortunately, we're going to have to run it really quick. So Niraj, quick thought on this, if you don't mind.
Sure. So yeah, I think that was very well said. I think there's no one source of truth, and I think part of the problem is that these companies are trying to be the source of truth, and I think their attempts to make us safe are keeping us more unsafe. And ultimately, I think the power of Web3, again, is taking that tool for self-sovereignty, owning your data, owning your identity, and being able to have models be how you want it to be. Maybe the Gemini thing you do like and you want that, but you should have that choice. And the problem is you don't have that choice, and that's the big problem with centralized AI today.
10 seconds.
I agree with I agree with everything that's been said, and I'll just leave you guys with the thought that it's becoming increasingly clear that these large monolithic models aren't going to be the way to go. And the two reasons are basically privacy and the performance of these models across different sort of cultural contexts and venues, right? Privacy. You don't want to give all of your email data and personal data to OpenAI. Nobody wants that, but OpenAI is poised to suck in more data than Google and Facebook combined. And on the other hand, if you just have one chat GPT, people in a different cultural context might not identify with it kind of culturally, politically, and it's very, very clear that these models are going to break up into many smaller models that are much more localized and much more private.
Okay, as I said, a can of worms there. I'm going to use this as a segue to give you guys a shameless plug, since I am here representing myself as Michael Casey, no longer Michael Casey of CoinDesk, because my big project at the moment is actually a book. It's called Our Biggest Fight, and it's coming. There's nothing worse than an author on stage who is shilling their book. I know this is tough. March 12th, co-written a book with Frank McCourt. It's called Our Biggest Fight, and where this is relevant is it's all about how we need to desperately fix a broken internet that has become dominated by 5 big walled garden companies, one of which is obviously taking a broad-minded view on how to move this thing forward. And it's called Our Biggest Fight, Reclaiming Liberty, Humanity and Dignity in the Digital Age, co-written with Frank McCourt. Take a look at it. Very relevant to this idea that we've got to move fast and sort of reclaim a decentralized internet, which is ultimately, what the thing was built for in the first place. And as we move into the AI age, it's critical. So thank you for you guys for talking us through how we might get to that utopian world. A big round of applause to the panel. Thank you.